Hi, this is Tim Byrne. Tim Byrne Almost Live. And the day after the Toronto elections, Faith Goldy. Hi, Faith.
Hi.
I'm sure she was really tired. You came in third.
Yeah, we placed on the podium. Feel good about it. We're putting these on now?
Yeah, we're supposed to put them on so I can hear you because I need to make sure that our levels are good and somebody can talk to me. So and I asked you back for a bunch of reasons. A, I want to know how the election went. Two, I got in a lot of crap about you. Two things. Yeah, right. A lot of my listeners said I've really left my core roots of why I do the show, which was for construction, development, property management. So I had this huge influx of people telling me to get back on track, and I said to them, politics, funny enough, is directly related to development, occupancy, and employment, and what happens in our political spectrum will directly affect us over the 4 years following. And
your tax rates, what you're expected to pay your employees, where you can operate, etc. Yeah,
right. So on top of that, I had some kook who hid himself inside of Instagram, and I don't know if you know who he is. His name is Ponyboy. Okay, so Ponyboy called me a neo-Nazi for having you on the show.
That's not unusual.
And then started to blacklist me and Byrne on Demand, my sponsor, and State Door and Glass.
Oh, no.
Oh, brutal. How I rebutted was really politically correct, and I said that he's more than welcome to come on the show.
Yeah.
My number, and now this becomes not business, this becomes Tim Byrne. The civil liberties that we appreciate can only be appreciated when you don't like what you hear. And that civil liberty is freedom of speech. And when it's working when you don't like something that you hear. You know that the reason why our forefathers strolled into the country was so that they weren't suppressed, so they could speak their mind without retaliation.
Yeah, the redcoats did not like what the bluecoats had to say about things.
Yeah, and
particularly that's exactly why the Patriots had to go out and fight, is because they believed in these sorts of freedoms and liberties. And as overused as it is, it's free speech for all or free speech for none. And you can't just believe in free speech for the people that you agree with.
And that's no truer said. And I think when people chastise anybody for speaking out, I think you almost have to stare in the mirror and go, maybe I shouldn't be saying what I'm saying either. And freedom of speech is freedom of speech. There's no, you can do it, but I can't, and vice versa. That becomes communism and fascism.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I disagree with just about every single evening talk show host that exists in American primetime television. All of those comedians, even down to the Bill Maher's. I mean, there are certain nuggets that we will agree on.
I like Bill Maher.
Okay, fine.
I think Bill Maher is sarcastic and creative and witty.
He's a cut above the other guys, that's for sure. But the whole point of the matter is I'd never urged them to go off screen. I'd never lobby their sponsors to stop sponsoring them. My theory is that let them air out, this business of sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let their ideas be aired out, and the intellectually rigorous will decide to agree or disagree. And if for nothing else, it makes for good entertainment.
Okay, so these articles that they sent to me, this is from Most Terrifying Woman in Canada, Faith Goldy.
I'm really a sweetheart. That's what these
29-year-old white nationalist who ran for mayor of Toronto.
Look, at the end of the day, it's the same article that's been written 1,000 different times, and it's slanderous, libelous, a bunch of names that they throw around with very little substantiation as to why they call me those things.
So you're okay with Muslims? You're okay with Jewish people?
Yeah, of course. I take certain I take issue with certain parts of the Quran, like the 109 verses that call for violence to be waged against unbelievers. But I think, again, in a free and democratic society, we should be able to talk about these things. And certain people, hey, I'm a devout Catholic, will say, I take issue with what your church says about homosexuality or the sex abuse scandal, but I'm not weak-minded. I am not weak-spirited, and I can engage in debate on these, yes, sometimes uncomfortable issues.
how do you go from this icky, you're a raceless Muslim hating person, and everything that they broadcast about you is just awful. How do you convert that and go, I don't have a problem with Muslims, black people.
I do it with my arguments and more exposure. And if that means it's not in the mainstream, then it's going to be in alternative medias. And I'll tell you right now, I find it very interesting that you mentioned the fact that it was essentially a conglomerate of white men who took issue with what I had to say. That has been my experience, even down to the doors, that when we were knocking on doors across the once great city of Toronto, it was actually white people that it was hardest to bring our message to, and that it was new Canadians and visible minorities, although technically whites are a visible minority in Toronto right now, but by the traditional definition
okay,
of
stop.
the term. Yeah.
By virtue of you saying that,
yeah,
there's a pile of listeners that right now went, you just said white people were a minority, which then becomes a racist comment. I could see somebody taking a sound bite out of that.
I think that they're 47% of, that's a minority. That's under 50%.
I know it's just when you use that kind of language, it becomes a target.
I think that people need to grow up and realize that facts are not hate speech. Like, facts are facts, and that's what I talk about. And again, facts might make you uncomfortable. Like, hey, there was a terrorist attack. That makes me really uncomfortable that people died. But to pretend it didn't happen doesn't solve anything. I'm the type of person where I'm more afraid of a terrorist attack than I am of being called Islamophobic. I'm more afraid.
Are you Islamophobic?
No, I'm not. I have told you that I take issue with the 109 verses in the Quran that call for.
I take issue with the Catholic Church not letting you use condoms, and they got a problem with homosexual people. It's weird.
Right. No, it's homosexual acts. And with respect to the condoms, like, that's something that actually they actually are okay with it when it's, but they're okay with it in certain parts of Africa where there's an AIDS epidemic, etc., where they say that it's actually more moral to use a condom so as not to spread this terrible disease. But when it comes to basically two consenting adults engaging in sexual activities, and I've actually spoken out against traditional forms of birth control in modern society and actually plead for things like abstinence, celibacy, and making babies when you do
everything. Every religion is going to have its icky parts.
Yeah.
I think religion was created from fear. So they needed to incorporate fear.
I'd say it's from God, but okay. I'll agree to disagree.
I'm not sure if I believe in God, and that's going to go bad all on its own. But the organization of church was created out of fear. They wanted to make sure the common people thought that something bad would happen to them unless they paid their dues, gave money to the church, supported a monarchy, a local government, the king, the pope, the cardinal, and put people in a position where they had fear of God, so they would support it. So they needed every single religion has some kind of weird take on what things should or shouldn't be, including violence. The Catholics were no better than anybody else as far as violence is concerned.
But it's not part of our text, right? It's not like our guy, i.e. Jesus, was calling for people to be slaughtered because they didn't believe in him. In fact, he died on the cross and said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And this is where I think the biggest divide between my critics and myself is this. It's one of cultural and moral subjectivity and relativism. I do not believe that all ideas are the same. I do not believe that all cultures are the same. I do believe that in right and wrong. I do believe that democracy is better than socialism. I do believe that freedom is better than tyranny. There are certain ideas which I think are better. And I'm unafraid to say that. I do believe that a woman unveiled is, as a woman, a better way of life and to live my life than to be veiled. And so these are, and by the way, I do believe in, women not being mutilated in certain ways that they are around the world is superior than them being mutilated. And so these are, again, very uncomfortable conversations, but that doesn't make me a hateful person. It's precisely because I love these women in other parts of the world, because I want freedom for their men and their children. But I'm not imperialistic. I don't want to go wage wars there to bring it there. Just so you know, just if they come here, it's not like we're going to start changing our way of life. Just like when I go to your countries, I don't want to change your way of life.
But if you're going to go mainstream and you're going to become a political figure in a country that is literally a stewing pot, more of a stewing pot probably than other countries all over the world. I mean, we have so many diverse cultures living under one roof,
especially in Toronto.
how do you stop people thinking that you're that crazy, kooky person?
Like I said, it's with my arguments, with more exposure. And I'll tell you right now, the majority of people think the same way I do. I understand there's a very vocal minority, like these losers who write this piece, like a few people who had their feathers ruffled from our last podcast who wrote into you. But I guarantee you, Tim, the majority of the people who hear me say, hey, I love Canada. I love our values. I love our way of life. I love our Constitution. And I don't want it to change. If you come to this country, it's not because you want to change it, but because you want to contribute to it. The majority of people will agree with me. And by the way, there should be laws to be able to come into this country.
According to recent reporting from New York Magazine, Goldy has undergone a dramatic transformation in the recent years from left-wing feminist to one of the most popular girls at her elite private high school in Toronto into a poster girl for white nationalists.
I was very popular in high school. And what that piece actually demonstrated was that I've always been the same person. I think it made me more relatable and actually human, unlike this caricature puppet of the far right that the media tries to do. So essentially, the piece that they're quoting here from New York Magazine, it was a gossip column. They went and they talked to slews of, so-called friends and former acquaintances, etc. And newsflash, right winger used to be left wing. Like that's literally what the moral of the story was. And it's something that I've never hidden. I was a far left Marxist, poncho wearing, braid donning, pro-abortion, I was just a Marxist. I really was. But that was me being a product of the culture that surrounded me.
It says she hosted a segment such as More Muslims, More Violence.
I used facts and statistics to prove that.
And equated immigration with white genocide.
Not all immigration. I never actually used the term.
You were eventually
white
fired for being too extreme. Is that true?
I was fired from the Rebel.media, and it wasn't for being too extreme. It was because of the fact that I appeared on a podcast that my former employer, who I still respect, he never even listened to the podcast, but it was too taboo of a podcast, and so he threw me out. It's not what I said, it's who I said it to. And so I believe in free speech. If Antifa or the far left or MarxistPress.com wants to have me on a podcast, I go talk to them as well. In fact, I think it'd make for a really entertaining debate. So if you're listening, please feel free to have me on, and I'll show that my commitment to free speech is not one-sided.
That issue that you brought up about immigration and the globalization of immigration is probably way too large for any millennial or a lot of people to actually grasp and understand. What they do see is in the U.S. specifically, we see some chaos, a lot of lying going on, and a lot of firing going on at the White House. And 2 years into this, I mean, CNN, the propaganda machine of all time, is just crucifying Donald Trump every night.
And yet he's still winning. Black employment has never been higher. Median income is higher than ever.
But it looks so unorthodox and so confusing.
Who gives a damn?
Well, don't you think that when your leader, and I lead a company, don't you think when your leader's a loon and he lies and he fires people and
where does he lie though? Like I don't see him lie.
He makes exaggerated comments that sometimes can't be substantiated, and that his staff cover for him, or he inserts editorial comments in the middle of a factual statement. And it just makes for everybody to go, oh, I don't know.
Well, look, at the end of the day, I care less about the packaging than I do about the principles and the results.
Yeah, but the people that are voting care about the package.
Right, and they voted for him. And I'm
not sure if they'd vote for him a second time. I mean,
we'll see. They were able to secure the Senate.
The Congress got screwed over.
Ish. It could have been, they could have lost both. They secured the Senate. And with respect to the House, I mean, they're still in the business of trying to essentially steal certain jurisdictions. Look no further than Florida, where all of these magical boxes full of ballots showed up out of nowhere. And what do you know? The Republicans are out and now the Democrats are in. There's a lot of hanky-panky going on. And I'm not going to say it's restricted to one side of the aisle.
So that I'm not just being the devil's advocate to you. I mean, listen.
No, I get it. You have an audience that you have to be responsible to, and I appreciate that.
I got to ask the questions because they're asking me the questions.
I totally get that.
Listen,
and I like Trump.
I like Trump.
Like it.
I like Trump.
Yeah.
I liked I don't like the chaos.
Hmm.
I don't like watching CNN anymore.
Chaos
I
was
don't
there
like watching
under
any of
Obama
that
as well.
It's just I don't like it, and I got that.
Huh.
But when he came up to a microphone, he had a presentation that was easily digested. But every time you talk about white or Muslim or the Quran, it makes you sound very racially orientated rather than globally orientated. And I today want a politician that's globally orientated and not isolative. I can't handle the isolation anymore.
Well,
Every society is. I watch North America just isolate the Muslims, isolate the Jews, isolate the whites, isolate the blacks. Shit, we're all in one big fat stewing pot now. So why can't we just all men, women, green, pink, yellow? I don't give a shit. Why can't a politician go? Nobody's going to have a chip anymore on the shoulder, and we're all going to work together to make things a little better.
One politician won't be enough. That's why. Right now, it is an all-out war on every single
language.
front. But I'm not going to stop because this is exactly how I see it. When you go to university campuses and I attend events that are being hosted, I believe the one that I'm about to refer to, I believe it was Trent University.
Reorientate your language, and more people won't be writing shit like this, and they'll be looking at you, Faith, and going, I'd like her in power. Every time you use that whole war and it just sounds all very dirty and harsh, and I think it scares the shit out of people.
Okay, so what it is, it's a reaction to what is actually out there. I am grounded in reality. If people want to live in an airy-fairy kumbaya, everyone sits together
so we can use
the parachute.
we can use reality, and we can use a vernacular that represents a positive outcome rather than a negative. And I'll tell you, everybody dispenses either positive energy or negative energy in this world. And today, I look at my kid who's in the audience. Today, I'd rather see a politician come into line, and I'm not talking about an empathetic idiot like Justin Trudeau, but somebody who comes in with positive energy rather than looking for the negative.
Okay, so I think that, and this is
energy, and that comes with vernacular, right?
Yes,
the language you choose.
See, I think where we'll take the example of Donald Trump, where you might see negative energy, I see positive energy. He's promising a new dawn for America, and he is delivering. His promises made, promises kept. Everything from more money in your pocket, less foreign wars, less, financial aid to foreign countries.
And I agree with you. It just looks so dirty deals. And ugly. That's all.
You might not like taking the Buckleys, but it's going to cure your colds, right? And
I got it.
So I understand that life can be uncomfortable, but these are serious things. This is statecraft and strategy, right? This is everything from dollars and cents to your kid's healthcare, his education, how we enlist our men and women into wars, what sort of wars we fight, who we allow into our country, and frankly, the future of our nations. And that's something that keeps me up at night. And because I want what's best. I want a positive outlook. But in order to actually achieve that, we have to be very real about where we are. And if I can just circle back before you started saying that I have a negative outlook on everything. I went to this one thing, and I just want to give you an example so you don't think that I'm crazy. And if you got kids or grandkids in university, talk to them. No, stop it. He's making a cuckoo sign right now. But talk to your kids and ask them what they're learning in school, because I'm actually out there and I'm sitting in on some of these lectures, etc. It was a whatever breakout session, whatever you call a seminar about it's okay to be against whiteness. And there's a
where was this being done?
Trent University, and they said that to be white, all white people, quote, are racist. This is the stuff that's being taught to our kids, and when I hear this stuff, my heart breaks. I would never ever attend a lecture called "It's Okay to Be Against Blackness." That's insane. That sounds racist. By the way, during the Toronto mayoral debate,
you sat in that debate though about the white thing.
Yeah.
Like you actually sat there for an hour and listened to somebody talk.
Yeah, and I tape recorded the whole thing. I should actually make a video about the stuff that was said there, because I do this stuff just for fun. And by the way,
this was endorsed by the university.
Yes.
As part of the curriculum or some dog shit thing.
Yes. And by the way, it was a white guy who was giving the speech. It wasn't like, I'm not making up this like blacks on one side, whites on the other side. To be honest, a lot of really pencil neck, pointy head white guys are the problem for this sort of stupid psychology that we're now ramming down our kids' throats. And it's making kids who I think were otherwise racially unaware, very aware. And that's what makes me uncomfortable, And so anyway, I think a lot of what I talk about is frankly reactionary to our politics, reactionary to our culture, and reactionary to the current unprecedented social experiment we find ourselves in.
That's a bad picture of you.
Everyone always tells me that. I don't actually mind
That's a bad picture. No,
Okay,
I don't
fine.
like that picture.
Okay. Well,
Is it not?
People always tell me that it's not a good picture.
Faith, that's not. No, I've seen better pictures of you, Faith. See, that's a nicer picture of you.
Thanks. That was during the campaign trail. Oh, by the way, during the campaign trail, we had a debate that was called the Black Vote debate that I was also uninvited from. I feel like we should be talking out against this stuff. Can you imagine a white vote debate? Why is it that I get all this crap, but everyone else is allowed
I think you have 4 years to psychologically figure
become a nice girl?
No, not become a nice girl and not hide from the issues, but present them in a way that is collaborative. Rather than making an isolative comment, because I think it's.
I want to collaborate with people who are right.
You didn't mean right, like left or right.
No, I mean like right or wrong.
Right or wrong.
Yeah, I have no interest in talking to people who are low energy losers with a social justice, cultural Marxist outlook of the world, because we're just going to always be butting heads. I want to move forward.
That's my only advice, is that you got to click yourself a little more in the middle so that people don't take you so abruptly. That's the biggest fear people have. They take your language and they go, and I think Canadians aren't Americans. They don't thrive off that sensationalism, war, white supremacy, white male men dying. It all becomes kooky in people's heads.
Look, at the end of the day, Justin Trudeau's puppeteer, a man by the name of Gerald Butts, who's basically been pulling the strings since they were in university together at, I believe, McGill. He said that everyone who disagrees with Justin Trudeau is a neo-Nazi. Like, if you're going to say that I'm hyperbolic and I use inflammatory language.
I like hyperbolic. I'm going to use that word.
Yeah. Then at least be honest about the fact that my political enemies are the exact same thing. And so why would you bring a lemon to a gunfight? I fight fire with fire.
This is Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne almost live. And this is your Wednesday night, and it will be your drive home or after dinner video. And Faith Goldy?
Thanks, Tim. I love it. This was good.
Thank you for coming on again. I really, really appreciate it. And I'd like you to come on a year from now. I want to see how your talking tour went.
All right. Perfect. I'm right into it. Let's do it.
Find us at PM Expo next 2 weeks from now, October 28th, 29th, and 30th. We got Quad Reel, Cushman Wakefield, Avison Young. We're working on a Doug Ford, but after this podcast, I ain't getting Doug Ford, but we're working on Doug Ford.
You had me on.
We're working on Doug Ford. And we're going to see you down at the show. Take care. Good night.